or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dewbs Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Hello, it's me, Christopher Hope, GB News' political editor, standing in for Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg on State of the Nation tonight.
The previous government were running an open borders experiment.
That's right, the figures are in. Net migration into the UK hit a record high of, get this, nearly 1 million people last year. And while numbers are down for this year, they're still at more than 700,000. Tonight, I'll be speaking to former Home Secretary Suella Braverman, who has said the reduction is because of the policies she was pushing for when in government. Plus, Reform UK has announced that former Tory MP Dame Andrea Jenkins is its new surprise candidate for Lincolnshire Mayor. Meanwhile, the assisted dying bill is voted on tomorrow night, as Nigel Farage was saying, and after my interviews with a Tory MP and a Labour MP on it for Chopper's Political Podcast, we'll be debating that topic. Plus, after the closure of centuries-old Smithfield and Billingsgate markets in London, I caught up with City of London councillor and lawyer James Tunbridge, who voted against that controversial decision. State of the Nation starts right now. I'll also be joined by my panel, GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and the journalist and Conservative peer Paul Goodman. The email remains the same, mailmog@gbnews.com. Send me your thoughts about immigration, assisted suicide and Smithfield and Billingsgate markets. But first, here are the headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Chris, thank you. Good evening. It's just gone 8 o'clock. These are your headlines. We start with some breaking news. The Transport Secretary has admitted pleading guilty to an offence connected with misleading the police while a parliamentary candidate in 2014. The Times newspaper is reporting Louise Haigh was convicted of fraud after a police investigation involving stolen and missing mobile phones 6 months before the 2015 general election. Ms Haigh said she was mugged while on a night out in 2013, then later discovered that the mobile in question had not been taken. She declared her conviction in full to Sir Keir Starmer on being appointed as Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary in 2020. Meanwhile, the Conservative Party chairman, Nigel Huddleston, has responded, saying these are extremely concerning revelations. Keir Starmer has serious questions to answer regarding what he knew and when. The Prime Minister has accused the previous government of running an open borders experiment while giving a press conference at Downing Street today. In the latest migration data, net migration fell 20% in the year to June 2024, down from a record high of 906,000 in the previous year. Meanwhile, the cost of the asylum system has soared to more than £5 billion, nearly 12 times the amount spent a decade ago. Sir Keir Starmer's speech comes as the government has announced an immigration deal with Iraq. Meanwhile, the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, has responded, saying the Prime Minister has no plan and no desire to tackle the high levels of migration.
Keir Starmer had almost nothing of substance to say. This is a man who has ruled out having a cap on legal migration. It's a man who cancelled the Rwanda deterrent before it even started. On his watch, already small boat crossings are up by 23% compared to last year. He promised to close down asylum hotels, yet we find out today 6,000 extra people are in those asylum hotels. Keir Starmer has no credibility on this issue, and what he announced today had almost no substance at all to it.
In other news, the Scottish Government has announced all pensioners in Scotland will receive a winter fuel payment next year. From 2025, every pensioner in the country will receive the new benefit, with those in receipt of qualifying benefits like pension credit getting £200 or £300 depending on their age, and wealthier pensioners getting £100. It comes after both the UK and Scottish governments earlier this year axed the universal winter fuel payment. Vladimir Putin has threatened to attack decision-making centres in the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv with the country's new ballistic missile, Oreshnik. The Russian president made the threat hours after launching a comprehensive strike on Ukraine's energy grid overnight. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky described the assault as another act of Russian terror, with over 90 missiles and nearly 100 drones targeting civilian infrastructure. And the Prince and Princess of Wales paid tribute to teenager Liz Hatton, who died on Wednesday after battling a rare form of cancer. In the tweet, the couple say, "We are so sorry to hear that Liz Hatton has sadly passed away. It was an honour to have met such a brave and humble young woman." Last month, the 17-year-old was pictured hugging the Princess of Wales at Windsor Castle after being invited to take pictures there. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. So the annual migration figures are out, and over the course of this 1-hour programme, about 83 people will settle in this country, going on those past figures. Over the course of the next 24 hours, it's nearly 2,000 more people will arrive than leave, and over the week, nearly 14,000. The revised figure for the year to June 2023 is a net 906,000 people entering the UK, a new record which is up from the initial estimate of 740,000. For the 12 months of June this year, the picture improved a bit, with net migration falling 20% to 728,000. Still 4 times the pre-2019 level. Earlier today, at a press conference, I asked the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, the same question. How much migration is too much?
Chris, that we want and are intending to drive these numbers down. They're far too high. They signal a loss of control. I'm not going to pluck an arbitrary number, because that has been tried many years in a row and it has achieved absolutely nothing. And what I'm not going to do with the British public is adopt an approach which we know has not succeeded and pretend that it's going to succeed. I think the days of fiction and pretending there are easy answers are over. These are the days of hard graft.
So what amount of migration is acceptable? Let me know via mailmog@gbnews.com. That's mailmog@gbnews.com. I'm joined now by the former Conservative Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. Suella Braverman, welcome to State of the Nation. Do you want to issue an apology to viewers and voters and listeners to this programme about the scale of migration on your party's watch?
Absolutely, Chris, you're right. This is why I've been apologising for several months, actually, because we failed on immigration. It's been an unequivocal failure by the last Conservative government. It's one of the big reasons why we were booted out of office in such an emphatic way by the British people. We made promise after promise to lower migration, and instead we reached and oversaw unprecedented levels of net migration. And so, yes, the Conservative Party does need to bow its head to the British people and say, we got it wrong in the past, and we need to try and rebuild that lost trust.
We heard just that very language, didn't we, from Kemi Badenoch, the new leader of your party, yesterday. She said, we got it wrong. What will the damage be here? There's lots of comparisons, I think, with the chaos over the Liberal Democrats' commitment on tuition fees they reversed in government. In many ways, your party pledged to cut migration through 4 elections, and it never happened and never went anywhere near the tens of thousands figure promised in 2010. Is this your tuition fees moment?
Well, I think the reality is this has been a problem that the Conservative Party has failed to grapple with for many, many years. And we, not just for the Brexit vote. I voted for Brexit because I wanted to lower migration. I was proud to stand on the 2019 Conservative Manifesto because it included a pledge to lower overall numbers. And despite those pledges, even going back to the time of David Cameron to lower the numbers to the tens of thousands, we failed. There's one, small kind of, silver lining, if that's the right term. But, the numbers are falling. It's not a consolation because they are still out of control and far too high. But the 20% fall that we're seeing in the figures published today do represent, hopefully, the beginning of a downward trend. And they are thanks to the changes that I brought in place, put into in May 2023.
I was going to ask that exactly. So why do they fall? The 20% that we're seeing in these figures are when you were Home Secretary. So that's your policy response. And we'll be seeing James Cleverly when he was Home Secretary. The measures he put in place a year ago, that should transfer to figures next year. But what did you do when you were Home Secretary?
Well, listen, I went into the Home Office in the autumn of 2022, and I went in focused and determined and horrified by the scale of the problem at that stage. We had just had the figures from the ONS in the July of 2022, at which point the numbers had topped 1 million for the first time. We had issued 1.1 million work and study visas. And I thought that was horrific. I went in the autumn of 2022, determined to turn the tide. And I set out a whole package of measures like raising the salary threshold, restricting the number of dependents, restricting the graduate route, which is a massive incentive for foreign students, and a whole raft of things. I managed to get a small portion of those measures through with the support of the Prime Minister in May 2023, and namely major restrictions to the number of dependents that students could bring. We've seen a large fall in that number today.
So what was the problem? Was it the Treasury blocking you? I note that the Office for Budget Responsibility thinks there'll be an average net increase of 315 to 325,000 people every year till the end of the decade. That's the Treasury document. Is the problem here the Treasury likes, frankly, cheap labour from overseas rather than relying on Brits, more expensive Brits, to fuel economic growth?
That's a good way of putting it. The OBR at the time, it's slightly attenuating its view now, but 2 years too late, frankly, for my liking. The OBR took a view, was quite wedded to this view, that more immigrants coming into the country, regardless of what they were earning or regardless of what they were doing, would necessarily be a good thing for economic growth. I fundamentally disagreed then with that view, and I still do. And that view from the OBR infused and influenced most of the government departments. And that's why the Home Office, and as Home Secretary, I was really the only minister battling against the consensus for lower immigration.
Kevin Badenoch blamed the Home Office. She thinks the wrong people are being hired to work there. Is that right? You worked there. Was there a cultural issue in the Home Office? Some people leave there and go and work for charities, human rights groups and the like. Is that where the problem is, the type of person being appointed to the Home Office?
When it comes to legal migration, I don't personally think we can blame the civil servants. I worked with the team there on legal migration. They were actually incredibly eager to exercise our newfound powers that we had designed post-Brexit, because, of course, we could no longer pass the buck to Brussels. We had developed a points-based system, and it was actually relatively straightforward to implement these changes. There was no need to pass legislation and worry about the House of Lords. There would have been no need to worry about the Human Rights Court in Strasbourg. There was no worry about other logistical challenges. Politically speaking, this was very much within the executive decision-making sphere to make the changes to legal migration, like raising the salary threshold or making the changes to dependents. All I needed was the green light from the Prime Minister, and unfortunately it wasn't forthcoming.
And that's the problem. I think maybe a bit harsh by Sir Keir Starmer saying it happened by design, not by default. But certainly I think Brexit gave your group of people running the country the power to deal with this problem, and you didn't accept it and didn't want to use it, and then you've copped it at the ballot box.
Well, that's why, it's relatively straightforward to fix this problem quickly if the Prime Minister of the day wanted to. And Keir Starmer's stance is outrageous. He could, if he wanted to, implement a cap, which made a commitment in law to a limit to the number of people we bring into the country. He could, if he wanted to, scrap the graduate visa route. He could, if he wanted to, raise the salary threshold again. He could, if he wanted to, restrict the number of universities who could bring in foreign students, which makes up for a massive amount of the immigration numbers. All of those things would be relatively simple to actually implement and would lead to quite quick results in the net migration figures. So this is on Keir Starmer now. If these figures stop falling or they continue or they start to rise, this will definitely be a choice by this Prime Minister, not an accident.
Look, Suella Braverman, thank you for joining us tonight on State of the Nation. It's great to see you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you. With me now in the studio here is Labour MP for Dover and Deal, Mike Tapp. A crucial area, isn't it, of course, illegal migration. But on legal migration, is Suella Braverman right? There are the powers that are now there for your Prime Minister to sort this out. But today, when I asked him, he wouldn't set a cap on net migration figures.
Well, look, we've got to look at the mess that we've inherited here. And I think Keir was spot on saying that we have inherited open borders. And I've been seeing this in my constituency from an illegal migration perspective. And all round, the Home Office got it completely wrong. So Suella doesn't really have a foot to stand on there, I would say. Look, going forward, it's important that whilst we remind the public of the mess that we have inherited, which is why it's so difficult, that we do lay out what we look to
Well, we look forward to
future.
seeing an immigration white paper published imminently, we're told by the PM in number 10 today. It looks like there'll be plans here to deal with the points-based system, going towards what Suella Braverman was saying there, and bans on hiring foreign workers, that's British jobs for British workers. It does need, I think, a whole-of-government approach. It strikes me there's lots of silos in the Tory government. Kevin Badenoch felt it was being handled by business on salaries, but not aware of health service or maybe farming and the requirements there. So if you have a whole-of-government approach, you may tackle this
Exactly
issue.
that. And actually it starts at education, doesn't it? Because we're looking at apprenticeships into things like engineering have halved while those visa applications that were accepted doubled. So we've got to put British workers first. That's exactly what the Labour Party will be doing, whilst we're also working hard to secure the borders from illegal migration so that system isn't being exploited. We need to control this system. What we've inherited is completely out of control, hence 1 million. And coming back to caps, look, they said 100,000, we ended up with 1 million.
What cap would you set if you were the PM?
What the cap I would set would be how many do we need to keep the economy growing? And the fact is, if you're failing to ensure that British people have jobs, you will need to import outside work. So the priority has to be jobs for British people.
But you know in government, although you're not in government, but you're a figure in the government, that if you set a cap, that instructs officials how to behave. You almost want to pull the whole kind of wagon into line with a firm pull on the reins and set some form of cap.
Well, I mean, history suggests otherwise, doesn't it? Looking at what happened after the last cap was set. So it's important to have the philosophy, which is jobs for British people first, and then outside workers to plug the gaps.
If you have a net 325,000 arriving here every year for the next 5 years, that's 1.5 million new people here. That's your target for new homes. It almost eats up the entire home supply, which you're trying to plan. That's a problem.
And this is a problem. This is why we've got to stop relying on outside work forces. Of course, and I must say this, they do have a value as well, and we mustn't downplay that, but it's got to be work for British people first. And within there, we need to be fixing the NHS and nursing training schemes. We've got to make sure that people can see a GP, that there's houses available for young people. There's a hell of a lot to do across government because we've inherited a mess, but of the last work has.
And you've got a chance. You can keep blaming the Tories, I think, for a few months longer now, but at some point it's on you, isn't it?
The ghost of the last 14 years that the Tories subject us to will be there for years to come, unfortunately, and we've seen that today with these new statistics coming through. So.
Yeah, illegal migration now, really bad. The scale of the increase in the cost of the asylum system, 5.4 billion. This is an embarrassing figure going up. I mean, how can you get these people out of hotels, dealt with, processed, and maybe even returned from whence they came?
Yeah, and it's important that we do invest in this broken system. And the way we reduce the expenditure on hotels is by firstly reducing those crossing by small boats. We'll be doing that with the Border Security Command, bringing in the likes of MI5 and our new deal with Iraq, which takes it on at source. And then those that do arrive, we speed up the processing, which we've taken action on, putting more decision makers in the Home Office. If you speed up the processing, you can then deport those that shouldn't be here. Already we've seen nearly 10,000 deported under the Labour government. That's a 50% increase on what we saw the previous year with the Conservatives. 14% of those were foreign offenders. So we're taking action, but it will take time to have that full impact because these are
trying to tackle the big wheels, the Mr. Bigs at the heart of this. Do you, from your position in Dover, of course, it's a big issue locally, do you think scrapping Rwanda scheme was correct? Because that was acting as a disincentive to cross the channel.
It wasn't.
It wasn't acting as a disincentive.
Deported, it was not a disincentive.
Because there was some reporters found people saying that, didn't they?
Look, you're always going to find different people saying different things. You've got to look at the stats. They deported 4 voluntarily, so it wasn't even.
That was to prove it was a safe country, of course.
It was a ridiculous scheme. It cost £75 million, which we've now diverted.
Might have worked, might tap.
There's no way. Look, the fact is it would have taken 99 years to deport those that crossed in that way, so that's not a deterrent. What is a deterrent is 10,000 deportations since Labour came into government, and we'll continue down that route.
Well, Mike Tabb, thank you for joining us today on State of the Nation. Great to have you here. Thank you for coming in. Now, after the break, we'll be continuing our coverage of the shocking revelations about migration. Plus, we'll be diving into Dame Andrea Jenkyns' surprise defection to the Reform UK Party.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Joined by international life coach Cheryl Findlay, who has joined forces with a Liverpool business owner, Kate Hill, of sustainable sportswear brand Lola Star, to empower women and inspire women across the nation. And to celebrate this partnership with the new Lola Star collection, the two will be hosting an exclusive event next Saturday.
The sportswear brand was launched after, well, your story. You lost how much weight?
So 16 stone, which is over £220, which I know is quite significant. But during that kind of decade-long journey, I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about what it takes to be successful, to be happy, to be well, and to just live an incredible life every day.
Are you giving them goals to work towards or helping them structure their life?
Yeah, so I don't give out goals, absolutely not. It's all about whatever an individual wants. So what we do to begin with is we understand, like, where are you now? Where are you thriving? Where do you feel really happy and excited in your life? And what's lacking? Like, where would you like to feel better? Where would you like to improve? And then we take it from there.
So I'd love to take that on board. I'd love to be my true self and fulfil my potential. So have you got any practical tips on how to do that?
Yeah, so we start with clarity, right? Like, you need to know, it's such a busy, fast-paced world we live in. There's so much sensory overload. You know, it'd be so easy to be distracted. So we need to kind of quiet all that noise down and start with, where do I want to focus? Pick 2 or 3 things. Where do I want to focus? And then we define the goal. What would I like that area of my life to look, not just look like, but feel like? And then we take it from there. So that's where you would start. I actually had a cancer diagnosis in 2019.
Oh.
And I just decided if I was going to be lucky enough to be on the other side of it, I wasn't going to play small anymore.
GB News, the people's...
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel. Welcome back to State of the Nation. I'm Christopher Hope, GB News' political editor, sitting in for Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. We've been discussing the new migration data with former Tory Home Secretary Suella Braverman and Labour MP Mike Tapp, and here are some of your views. Dave says, in the present circumstances, only a 0 figure for net migration is acceptable. That, of course, is Reform UK's policy. Anyone arriving here illegally or without proof of identity should be sent back Australia style. Not to Australia, I imagine, but somewhere else outside of this country, I expect. Helen says, Chris, great show. Thank you, Helen. We need a 2-year moratorium on immigration until the government, forgive me, gets under control. And Carol says, great to see and hear Suella on Jacob's show with you, Chris. She could possibly have saved the Tory party, but when will she join Reform? I wish she would. Well, thank you for that. Now, continuing our coverage of today's migration data, I'm joined we are joined in the studio here by Anne Widdecombe down the line, the former Tory minister and now the Reform UK's Immigration and Justice spokesperson. Anne, thank you for joining us. Again, there we've got Dave, a viewer there, saying how he supports your party's policy on a net zero figure for immigration. But you know, I mean, you're a former Home Office minister. How on earth is that possibly enforceable by any government?
Well, you can get there, but what we have also said, and we need to make this clear, is that we are not going to refuse visas to people who are properly qualified in health. So doctors, nurses, carers, anybody with a proper qualification, genuine qualification, who wants to come here and work in that will be welcome. But of course, there are also people leaving all the time. And the more you can get to leave, and one of the things that we're looking at is the fact that so many students just stay on. They complete their studies, they're supposed to go back, they stay on. Sometimes with dependents as well.
But as you well know, having a net zero figure is very difficult. You're going to enforce shortages on the NHS and maybe in the fields. How can you possibly...
No, I've just said it's clear as day, and everybody would have heard me say we are not going to refuse visas to people who are properly qualified in health. I mean, that is the one exception that we have made. But it's not a it's not a long-term solution, that one. That one is while we skill our own population, but that will take time. You can't produce just doctors and nurses out of that. That's going to take time. And while that time is happening, we will take in people from abroad in order to keep our services going. But that's it. As far as the rest is concerned, the normal answer will be no.
Listen, now, Widdecombe, a big day here in Westminster. Your leader, Nigel Farage, had a big announcement about a former Tory MP. Let's hear what he had to say.
The 100,000 member happens to be a former Conservative Member of Parliament. Who'd believe that? Isn't that extraordinary that it should have worked out that way? Her name is Dame Andrea Jenkins. And not only is Andrea joining the party, but after an internal selection process, she has now been selected as our candidate, and she will run to be the newly created Mayor of Lincolnshire on May the 1st next year.
And Widdecombe, what's your advice to your new colleague in your party, Dame Andrea Jenkins?
Well, first of all, I'd say welcome and well done, and I hope she's the first of many. It just needs a couple to find the courage to do it, and the rest follow. So I hope she's the first of many. I mean, I have myself spoken to a former colleague who I just met at one reform conference. I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, when he's left Parliament, he said, "I'm a member." So obviously we are attractive to former Tory members, and of course the next stage is to be attractive to serving members.
Well, and will that happen? And who was the member? Who was the former Tory MP you spoke to at your reform conference?
Well, I don't have his permission to say, so I probably shouldn't. So everybody clapped him. Yeah, okay, it was Stephen Day. All I'm saying is that we have that appeal, and I think Andrea will be the first of many. Welcome, Andrea. Don't think she needs much advice from me. She's a very competent politician, and she'll make a huge addition to the team.
And you mentioned that serving Tory MPs might come across. How many might come across before the next election, do you think?
Oh, come on. I don't know that. You don't know that. No, okay. They don't. Nobody knows.
And Widdecombe, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us tonight on State of the Nation. Great to see you. And thank you for dialing in. Joining me now on the panel here at GB News is Nigel Nelson, our senior political commentator, and journalist and Conservative MP and peer, Paul Goodman. Paul Goodman, you heard there from Anne Widdecombe. She thinks some serving Tory MPs will come across the floor and join Reform UK. Is that right? Have you heard the same?
We're always hearing that. It's one of Nigel Farage's great ways of winding the media up, is to announce they're a Tory.
Doing it now,
of course she is. You know, Nigel's her leader, and she can take her cue, I'm sure. We will see. I don't think Andrea Jenkins is a particularly surprising defection. I'll say this. I do go up every week now to Prime Minister's Questions to the Gallery. Rupert Lowe, Reform MP, got up this week and asked a question. The chamber went very, very quiet. I think there is a real fear of reform around
benefits and migration, wasn't it? From
benefits and migration. I think there is a real fear of reform at the moment around among both the Tories and Labour. Whether that comes to anything, we'll get more of a sense in the May elections.
Nigel Nelson, should Labour be afraid also of Reform UK? I can't imagine anyone getting across the floor from Labour MPs, certainly.
Nor can I.
But I think they would say there's 100 seats or so last election when Reform was second to Labour.
Yeah, but I think Labour needs to be more concerned about the Lib Dems. I mean, they managed to come in with 72 MPs and got the same number they would have done, nearly the same number they would have done under PR. So if you're looking at another centre-left party, that's your real danger there.
Yes.
I think, as Paul says, Andrea's defection is hardly a surprise. I think that putting Nigel Farage on her election literature was a big giveaway at the time.
But not a surprise, but still damaging. I mean, the 100,000th member here, Tories have 135,000, 140,000 members. Will crossover, when Reform UK has more members than the Tory party, be a problem, an embarrassment for the new leader?
Nigel Farage's word for it on the numbers.
Yes.
I come back to the local elections and the elections taking place over the next few years in May. I think if Reform do really well in, say, Essex and Lincolnshire, bits of Kent, if they follow up next year by doing well in Labour areas, then maybe Reform are onto something. But I don't quite agree with Nigel about the Lib Dems and Labour in this sense, that the Lib Dems are usually opposing the Tories in Tory areas. There's very little Lib Dem Labour crossover.
Yes.
And I think Labour have got to watch reform in those areas like Tyneside and Wearside and South Wales.
I think they're sharpening their message on the economy and migration, I've noticed in recent days. Maybe Morgan McSweeney, this great Svengali behind the scenes, becoming Chief of Staff could be the answer. On migration, Nigel Nelson, for how long can Labour blame the Tories? I mean, they are rightly blaming the Tories right now, but that can't go on.
I mean, none of this was on Labour's watch, so these figures come in, are up to the point just before the election.
They're startling, aren't they? They are big.
Yeah, they are startling. I mean, the question obviously is how do they get them wrong in the first place? I mean, what was explained to me today is that actually you should do these figures over 2 years because you don't know the people who are staying or leaving until after that period, which is why the figures are all over the place.
Was the PM right not to give a migration cap figure when I asked him?
I think that you start giving figures and you get it completely wrong. What happens when you need particular care workers and you have a cap? You can't get any more. So on the basis of that, not putting a cap on things, caps haven't worked. David Cameron's cap never worked. It shouldn't be a numbers game. You take the migrants you need to fill the jobs you've got.
Well, Paul Goodman, Nigel Nelson, thank you both and stay with us. Coming up after the break, you'll be bringing an early glance at Chopper's political podcast with a rising star Labour MP telling me why he's backing tomorrow's landmark vote on assisted dying. Stay tuned.
Time for a weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A little bit of mist and fog around this evening. Overall, though, won't be as cold as last night, not as frosty. Most places are going to be dry. There's some pretty wet weather coming into western Scotland thanks to these weather fronts pushing north. High pressure sitting across eastern England. That's where we've got the light winds. That's where the fog is quite thick this evening. Parts of Lincolnshire down into East Anglia. A few patches elsewhere too. Generally clearing though as the night goes on because the breeze will pick up. Staying soggy though across northern Scotland. Rain across the Western Isles may ease, but staying very wet across parts of Orkney and Shetland. Most places there will have a dry night, not as frosty as last night for sure. Still pretty chilly first thing tomorrow across eastern England. We'll have that cloud and rain still across Orkney and Shetland's early doors. That should be scooting away to the north. Nothing like as cold as this morning across Scotland. Most places will start above freezing. Quite gusty though across the west coast and at times across the northeast. Quite blustery conditions here during the day. A bit more of a lighter wind further south, but just enough breeze, as I say, to clear away that fog this evening. So it should be a fine start across much of eastern England. Staying dry and bright here for most of the day. In the west, we'll see that cloud thickening, the breeze picking up, blustery conditions in western Scotland at times for Northern Ireland and northeast Scotland too. And you can see rain coming in here as well. So turning damp for Northern Ireland, western Scotland, bit of showery rain for the west coast of Wales, Devon and Cornwall by the end of the day. But look at the numbers here. We could see temperatures into the teens. Another pretty chilly feeling day across the east. By the weekend though, it's going to be much milder everywhere. Quite a lot of cloud around. Could see some sunny spells coming through northeast England, at times northeast Scotland. Bit of showery rain moving across Scotland for a time. But again, most places will be dry. But temperatures on the rise. Double digits everywhere and some places into the teens on Saturday. And similar temperatures Sunday too.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewbs and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dewbs Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. I'm Christopher Hope, GB News' political editor, standing in for Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. Now, tomorrow, members of Parliament will vote on a landmark bill that will legalise assisted dying, and the bill's sponsors have claimed they have enough support in Parliament for it to pass. And to better understand why they think we need to legalise assisted dying, I interviewed one of the bill's supporters, Labour MP Jake Richards, on my podcast, Chopper's Political Podcast.
You thought you'd be doing, I guess, within 5 months of being made an MP, but it's what...
No, but I mean, look, it's not... To be honest, it is one of the issues that I wanted to try and pursue if I was lucky enough to become a parliamentarian, because I think it's that important. I've had personal experience. I don't really talk about it that much, but...
Can you say now?
Well, just family members who've had difficult deaths. I wouldn't put it any higher than that, and it's something that... And as I touched upon earlier, you know, I come into politics to try and empower people in lots of different contexts, as I say, and this one seems to be actually the most acute. People right at the end of their life who are desperate to end the agony and pain that they're suffering. And I hope that this legislation can do that.
Labour MP Jake Richards on why he's backing this plan for assisted dying. Why are we in this position 5 months into a Labour government, Nigel Nelson? Is it a priority?
No, but it's something that needs to be dealt with.
Is it though?
Yeah, well, it was 2015 the last time that they had a vote on this. The vote went obviously against the bill such as this. It's a private member's bill, so in that sense, the government doesn't have any control over it anyway. I think that you need to deal with the issue. Whether this is being dealt with in the right and proper way, I'm not quite so sure. 5 hours debate probably isn't long enough.
No impact statement, so no idea on the...
The impact statement will come if it's passed. So
they're voting blind, aren't they, MPs? Tomorrow?
To an extent, yeah. I mean, the government's got to come up with a money resolution. They've got to pay for the next stages. You've then got to have the impact assessment.
Which is on the NHS and judges and all the checks.
And so, I mean, where my position has come a week ago...
Where are you on this?
A week ago, I was uncomfortable and undecided. I'm now veering much more to being against because of other countries. If you take Holland, 400 people there die by assisted dying. If that was translated into this country, you'd be talking about 90 people every working day. The courts and the NHS won't be able to cope. Canada has gone on the slippery slope. 2016, they came up with assisted dying. That was just for physical illness. Then the number of people who had no terminal diagnosis doubled. And last year, they added mental illness as one of the reasons why you could go through it. People's judgment
in
may
a
be
sense,
a problem.
it's a threshold bill or law which will be changed and expanded if people want it.
That would
That's
be my
where
fear.
we are.
I think just because once it becomes commonplace, that's when the checks and balances would start to be treated in a rather cavalier fashion.
Yeah, Paul Goodman, you're a Conservative peer. You may have a say on this if it goes through tomorrow. Where are you on the issue of assisted dying?
I just think you've got a whole mass of vulnerable old people.
In the House of Lords, you mean?
A health service that's really short of money. Yeah. Courts that, as Nigel has just said, tend to expand their role. You look at all this and you think, what could possibly go wrong? So, you know, if it comes before the...
People are in pain, though. They want to end that pain. They want control of their lives.
Right. So you need to be able to offer the palliative care, even if you support assisted dying, as an alternative. I think the government's got itself in a mess because it's looking at all those huge landmark reforms under private members' bills under Labour in the 1960s.
Abortion in 67.
Abortion, divorce law reform, homosexual law reform, as it was called then. And I think they've tried to follow the model, but they've got a bill that's just not fit for purpose.
And if it's I mean, there's an opportunity. It could happen tomorrow that a minority of MPs pass it because of a big number of abstentions. What will happen in the House of Lords if that happens? Will the House of Lords try and frustrate it?
Just step back from the House of Lords for a second. Part of the reason we're in this mess is the Health Secretary, who's got charge of it, Wes Streeting, he doesn't want it. And the Justice Secretary, who oversees the Lord, she doesn't want it either. So I think before you even get to the question of the Lords, you've got two hostile ministers in charge of this bill they don't want. One of whom is in charge of it.
It's not their bill and they're not in charge of it. It's a private member's bill.
Yeah, but the government has to give it time and support for it to reach the statute book. It can't just do that on its own. That's the whole point about doing these reforms by means of private members.
Is Paul Goodman right, Nigel Nelson? Is the intervention of Wes Streeting and Simon Malhotra about this whole thing killing it altogether?
I don't think it's necessarily killed it. I mean, the impression is that that it's going to be a very tight vote tomorrow. It's not going to be anything like 2015 where there was a massive vote against this. this. So it will be tight. I don't think they've killed it off, but Paul's point is absolutely right. Wes Streeting would have to actually administer this. He'd be the Secretary of State signing it off.
Yeah.
And there's been no kind of conversation about how the NHS is going to be able to cope with that. If I give you those figures I gave you before, if you're looking at, say, 20-odd thousand people a year, that's an awful lot for the NHS to deal with. So I can understand why he's not very keen on it, and we'd have to then see the money that the government puts forward, which would happen after it passes its second reading.
It's all the wrong way around for many people. I mean, voting on these plans without any idea on the impact on judges or GPs.
I just think it's really interesting listening to Nigel, who's been on the, as far as I can remember, on the fence about this. I remember when we were last discussing it, was thinking maybe there's a case for. He's really looked at the detail of this and what's happened aboard and just is not convinced. And he's a very fair-minded guy.
Thank you.
and you think we need to lance the boil and have this vote tomorrow? Because it is distracting all of our politics right now.
I mean, I'm not sure the deliberations are long enough. What one hopes for is that often on these occasions the House of Commons really rises to them. And I'm looking forward to hearing the arguments that come through tomorrow. I may be convinced, as I said, that I'm still uncomfortable. I'm mostly decided, but a bit of me can understand that people can have their right to decide what they do with their own lives.
Just finally, Paul Goodman, it tends to be the Tories are against it, Labour's in favour?
On the whole, that's usually true, yeah.
OK. Listen, thanks to my panel, Paul Goodman and Nigel Nelson, tonight. And after the break, I was speaking to the man who's been on the front line of the battle to keep the historic Smithfield and Billingsgate markets in London open. Stay tuned.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, our next guests have been working closely with celebrities and MPs to help clean up our planet.
Very important. Think Ocean was founded in 2021 with two main goals. One, educating the next generation to make sure that they know when they're growing up that naturally we have to take care of the planet, and cleaning pollution that's already in the environment.
Well, joining us now to tell us more is Think Ocean's founder, Hugo Valdez-Vera, and the co-founder, Nolene Mariappan. Really good
morning,
to see you both this morning. So, Nolene, let's start with you. What is Think Ocean, and why did you want to start this back in 2021?
Yes, so Hugo had actually been working on the environment and climate action for quite a long time. When he moved to the UK, he realised that there was a growing problem with plastic pollution and that more needed to be done because people weren't actually seeing the link between plastic, the impact on the environment and climate change. So he founded the organisation and I joined him with three goals, really. Education, looking at technology to scale solutions, and looking at how we develop more circular economy programmes. So actually looking at reusing, recycling, actually creating local economies from what people would consider waste.
Hugo, just how bad is plastic pollution around the world, and especially here in the UK?
Well, it is bad, but we don't know the extent of how bad it is. You know, this is not much interest from the bigger players or, some government for us to know every detail of the pollution. So if we know that is from 1 to 10 is 2, probably it's about 6.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. I'm Christopher Hope, GB News' political editor, standing in for, that man again, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. Now, one of the key stories we've covered here on GB News this week is the announcement, the sad announcement, I think, that after 800 years, Smithfield and Billingsgate markets in London are closing after the City of London Corporation voted against continuing the operations on the sites. Earlier today, I caught up with James Tunbridge. He's one of the City of London's councillors who voted to try and keep the institutions going. Tunbridge, thank you for joining us tonight on State of the Nation. The slaughter of Smithfield is what the Telegraph is saying. You are one of the 125 councillors who voted in this decision. How did you vote?
I voted against the proposal.
Why?
Well, I've spent about 15 years involved in the operation of these markets as an elected member, and I think that food is a fundamental element of what we offer to London, part of our existence, part of our history, and I think it epitomises what I call real-world jobs. Butchers, fishmongers, people that bring your food to your door. And I think doing that for London is a great thing. We clearly still need it. I think we do a good job of offering it. It's a shame that it has to end.
You're a Tory councillor, of course, and this...
I'm not anymore. I used to be.
Forgive me, you used to be, but that's your background. But this will be on Labour, won't it? Because it must be voted through in an Act of Parliament at some point in the future.
Yes.
So Labour MPs can reverse this now, but as far as you're concerned, it's out of the hands of the corporation.
That's right. We've had our vote, and the majority voted to end it. But all markets run under statutes. That goes all the way back to medieval times. So we can't just stop unless Parliament agrees that we can stop.
I do feel sad about it. I think a lot of viewers and listeners to GB News on State of the Nation will think there's something of our past being given up here.
Yes, I mean, I'm sure that anyone who's looked at various histories of London, I mean, the unique hats that the Billingsgate fish porters used to have where they carry fish on their head, the fact that there's a Christmas auction that lots of people go to at Smithfield where they get rid of all the meat just before Christmas, and it's quite a spectacle. So I'm sure
you walk off with a turkey under your arm.
Absolutely, and I think that there's lots of people that will at some point in their lives have been around London, particularly actually people that work in the financial side. They come in early, they see the traders working. It's, their lunchtime is the morning for everyone else.
And the traders themselves are being rewarded or paid off for this? Is that what's happening here?
Well, they've all got tenancies, so you can't just end their tenancy without compensation. So, yes, there's a compensation package for them to leave. And some traders, I think, want to keep going, and some traders are happy to take money and leave. And I don't know the precise numbers for any of it.
Well, what was the vote to get rid of this? 125 councillors. You're a common councillor on the Corporation of London. You had one vote. You voted against.
Yes.
Was it a narrow vote? Was it a big number in favour?
So there's... Not everybody was there, but there was quite a good turnout. I would estimate that there were probably about 90 people there that could vote.
Yeah.
Because it was a last-minute thing. This isn't in our usual cycle. It was only...
Held in secret, I understand.
Yes, in the sense that, so it wasn't in the normal cycle. It was a special meeting just to deal with this. We only had about a week's notice, which I think is a very short time to think about such a momentous decision.
Yeah.
A lot of people were uncomfortable with that. That meant that some people couldn't turn up because they didn't know it was coming. All I can say, because it was held in private, that I would be breaking the law to say what exactly happened. I wasn't given the numbers. They didn't do a recorded vote. So it was a majority, but I couldn't tell you exactly how much. I don't think it was a massive majority.
And despite the importance of it, to have it in private, a week's notice, it looks like it's being rushed through. I mean, I think Smithfield, Billingsgate have a wider national importance. And has that been looked at properly?
Well, some would say yes and some would say no. It has been rushed partly because in order to ask Parliament to pass a new act to let the markets close, if you're not actually in Parliament, you can only do that once a year in November. So we're running out of time. So the reason it's rushed is in order that by now, I imagine, they will have deposited a private member's bill in Parliament.
Right.
And that's the rush, because they wanted to get that done rather than waiting another 12 months.
What happens, I mean, Billingsgate I'm less familiar with out in the Docklands, but I certainly know Smithfield. Is it a win for gentrification, another coffee shop, another artisan stall? Is it going to be... Wow. Are we losing a bit of the kind of grist of our nation here?
You're definitely losing some of the grittiness.
Yeah.
And not everyone would say that was a bad thing, because actually for the traders themselves, they have to work through the night, and getting new people that want to work through the night is a real challenge for them. And partly they have to do that because since Ken Livingstone brought in the congestion charge, they couldn't afford to pay the congestion charge for the trucks coming in and out.
Is that why it's early in the morning, to avoid the charges?
Yes. So, I mean, it's always been one of those things that would work at unusual hours to accommodate when meat would arrive, etc. But it became really important that they all got out of there before the congestion charge starts in the morning.
Oh, gosh.
And then you've got emissions. You've got the low emission zone, which has made it more challenging because trucks are trucks. There's only so much you can do to make them better, particularly if you're not the manufacturer of the truck. So this was all leading us to the idea that we would keep it in London, but we'd move it to East London, where this was
instead it's being dropped altogether because well, why is your plan being dropped for a centre of excellence?
It's all about money, because when it takes time to come up, this is the thing, it took time to come up with this idea. It took me nearly 10 years to persuade colleagues, let's do this, and we got rid of it in 7 days. And it's really because when we came up with the idea 7, 8 years ago, costs for building something was a lot less. Everyone knows about inflation and the challenges of the last 4 or 5 years, and now it's a lot more expensive. And as a result, some people have said it's just too expensive. But I don't think we should have made such a rapid decision. I think we should have talked about the fundamentals of should we be in the food business and then the cost.
Well, James Tunbridge, a final word then. It goes to MPs.
Yes.
So MPs have a chance to reverse this removal, this excision of our national life, 1,000 years of history going here.
They've got a big decision to make because I suspect that most of them would say, well, you can't force someone to stay in business if they don't want to, and that's probably going to be the outcome. But yeah, they could decide that they don't feel that way, and that would create a real challenge.
Well, James Tunbridge from the Corporation of London, thank you for joining us tonight on State of the Nation. Thank you.
Thank you.
James Tunbridge there, the City of London councillor about Billingsgate Market. That's all from me here on State of the Nation. Up next is Ben Leo in for Patrick Christis. Ben, what's coming up?
Evening, Chopper. The lady of the moment, Dame Andrea Jenkins, is here live with me on the sofa, fresh off the back of her big defection to Reform UK. We've got Matt Goodwin as well, the political academic, talking about that absolutely bulging asylum bill running into the billions. And Chopper, have you seen this controversy about this cow feed that's being added to milk being sold in UK supermarkets, Tesco, Morrison's, Aldi? A lot of fuss about that. We're going to get stuck into that and ask, why are they giving chemicals to cows to stop them farting in the name of climate change?
Brilliant. That sounds very net zero friendly. Thank you, Ben Leo. Coming up after the weather, that's the great show from Ben Leo. Rees-Mogg is back on Monday. I am Christopher Hope, GB News' presenter, and this has been State of the Nation.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for a weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A little bit of mist and fog around this evening. Overall, though, won't be as cold as last night, not as frosty. And most places are going to be dry. There's some pretty wet weather coming into western Scotland thanks to these weather fronts pushing north. High pressure sitting across eastern England. That's where we've got the light winds. That's where the fog is quite thick this evening. Parts of Lincolnshire down into East Anglia. A few patches elsewhere too. Generally clearing, though, as the night goes on because the breeze will pick up. Staying soggy, though, across northern Scotland. Rain across the Western Isles may ease, but staying very wet across parts of Orkney and Shetland. Most places there will have a dry night, not as frosty as last night for sure. Still pretty chilly first thing tomorrow across eastern England. We'll have that cloud and rain still across Orkney and Shetland's early doors. That should be scooting away to the north. Nothing like as cold as this morning across Scotland. Most places will start above freezing. Quite gusty though across the west coast and at times across the northeast. Quite blustery conditions here during the day. A bit more of a lighter wind further south, but just enough breeze, as I say, to clear away that fog this evening. So it should be a fine start across much of eastern England. Staying dry and bright here for most of the day. In the west, we'll see that cloud thickening, the breeze picking up, blustery conditions in western Scotland at times for Northern Ireland and northeast Scotland too. And you can see rain coming in here as well. So turning damp for Northern Ireland, western Scotland, bit of showery rain for the west coast of Wales, Devon and Cornwall by the end of the day. But look at the numbers here. We could see temperatures into the teens. Another pretty chilly feeling day across the east. By the weekend, though, it's going to be much milder everywhere. Quite a lot of cloud around. Could see some sunny spells coming through northeast England, at times northeast Scotland. Bit of showery rain moving across Scotland for a time. But again, most places will be dry. But temperatures on the rise. Double digits everywhere and some places into the teens on Saturday. And similar temperatures Sunday too.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements? Or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dewbs Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
It's 9 p.m. This is Patrick Christie's Tonight with me, Ben Leo.
Previous government were running an open borders experiment.
A city the size of Birmingham and more coming to Britain in just 2 years. He blames the Tories, but refuses to put a cap on migration.
I don't think setting an arbitrary cap, which is what previous governments have done, is the way forward.
So just who can we trust to save Britain from collapse? The Tories?
Conservatives are going to develop a detailed plan for immigration to put before you at the next election.
Reform UK pipes up too.
Immigration figures, which are horrendous. Horrendous if you want to get a GP appointment. Horrendous if you want to travel around Britain's motorways. Horrendous if you want your kids or grandkids to ever get a foot onto the housing ladder.
And they've even paraded their latest new star.
Today, I've joined the